Breaking tonight, the Democrat-engineered government shutdown rolls on as Americans mark 1 year since President Trump took the oath of office. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro, live in our nation's capital tonight. We are following every development just down the street from me on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers have just wrapped up talks for the night, and they'll be back tomorrow afternoon to try to get the United States government back open for business. We'll keep you posted throughout the hour. And in just a few moments, I'll be joined live by Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway, as well as the President Trump's son, Eric Trump. Meantime, protests across the country today in major cities as critics of the president, his agenda, and his policies mark this 1 year anniversary of President Trump's inauguration by taking to the streets. We're going to be talking about all of it tonight, but first, my opening statement. 1 year ago, he promised he would prioritize the American people.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families.
And they promised they would obstruct and resist everything he did. Both have been true to their word. So here we are 1 year from the inauguration of America's 45th president, and a minority of Democrat senators take advantage of this day to shut the government down, holding the American people hostage, hundreds of millions of Americans, military families, and sick children, choosing to prioritize and protect 700,000 DACA recipients who aren't even citizens. Now, Republicans blame the Democrats. Democrats blame the president, saying Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the Oval. But this has nothing to do with the shutdown. 60 Senate votes are needed to pass a budget and keep the government open. Republicans only have 51. And to show you how mean-spirited the Democrats are, they are shutting the government down over a bill that has nothing in it that they oppose. Obstruction is their mission, pure and simple. Take a look.
I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier to try to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in.
People who enter the United States without our permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the U.S. legally.
Those who enter our country legally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law. And because we live in an age where terrorists are challenging our borders, we cannot allow people to pour into the U.S. undetected, undocumented, and unchecked.
So the Democrats are making the American people pay with a shutdown. Now, the Republicans have reauthorized CHIP, children's health care. They've delayed Obamacare taxes, but this isn't good enough for the Democrats who want to take care of illegal immigrants. As if we aren't already giving them education, medication, housing, and lawyers whenever they need them. Now, the president brought Democrats and Republicans together to work on a bipartisan solution and a permanent fix for DACA, always making clear that it's contingent on securing the border. Make no mistake, this is about stepping on President Trump's 1 year anniversary and his opportunity to highlight to America his accomplishments. Come on, folks, the Democrats are gaming you. So let's give credit where credit's due. Let me remind you that when Donald Trump came into office, our economy was in shambles. More Americans were unemployed than in our nation's history. Millions weren't even counted because they simply gave up looking for work. We had hundreds of thousands of families working 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And they said it was a healthy economy. But there was barely a pulse. 1% annual GDP was the new normal for those wizards. And he came to us at a time when we needed his tough talk, his unvarnished perspective. Think about where we were just 18 months ago under the leftist leader Barack Obama and an administration that allowed the sale of 20% of America's uranium to Russia with a payback to the so-called Clinton Foundation of $145 million and $500,000 for bill to pocket, while the Department of Justice and the FBI, so corrupt, so unlawful, so immoral, that they allowed a criminal, the hag that they tried to drag across the presidential finish line, to destroy evidence, delete emails, and get away with it. And so it was that Donald Trump stepped into the spotlight, a patriot who believed in putting America's interests first, who believed that the decline of America was a choice that we could reject. The American dream is now being renewed. 3% growth, maybe even 4%. A market that is roaring, historic highs. Unemployment, the likes of which we haven't seen since 1973. And African-American unemployment, its lowest in decades. Tax cuts for all of us. Government regulations cut faster than at any time in history to help business. And the military finally getting the support it deserves while it crushed the Islamic Caliphate in the Middle East. Illegal immigration is at its lowest level in more than a decade. And so, yes, folks, he arrived just in time when our nation needed to be inspired, needed a new agenda, desperate for a better path to the future. If I were a betting person, I would predict that this shutdown will end by the beginning of the week. The American people see the vindictiveness of the obstruction and resist Trump movement. And this was a simple ploy to step on the president's inaugural anniversary. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, #Judge Jeanine. And joining me now is Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway, who is live from the White House. Good evening, Kellyanne.
Good evening, Judge.
Well, okay, so here we are. The president was supposed to be in Mar-a-Lago tonight, celebrating his first year in office and the many accomplishments that he has had. But right now, he's inside the White House working on a deal to get the government running again. Instead, what is going on in the Oval Office right now? What can you tell us?
Well, the president's being who he's always been, Jeanine. As a successful businessman, he's a master deal maker, negotiator. He has always believed in bringing all different ideas and inputs and individuals to the table. You know, he always looks for disagreement, dissension. He doesn't need 100% agreement. He just needs an open, honest conversation. This is the president who 10 or 11 short days ago convened that historic meeting in the cabinet room that went on for 55 minutes, close to an hour on live TV. America saw for themselves a president talking to a bicameral, bipartisan group of individuals on the issue of immigration. Fast forward a week later, you have Democrats voting no last night to a continuing resolution. Effectively, that means they voted no to keep the government open. They voted no to military funding. They voted no to these military wives getting the money they need. They voted no to the Border Patrol agents because they're saying yes to DACA recipients who cross that border illegal, many of them. Now, that is an issue the president said he will take up. We can negotiate DACA again, and the entire immigration plan, like ending the diversity visa lottery, ending chain migration, building that wall, we can negotiate that again once the government gets reopened. That's March. January, the spending ran out. So these Democrats who said no last night said no to keeping their government open. This president, he stands ready to sign into law anything that is fair to all of the folks who are relying upon this money, and he stands ready to negotiate on other pieces after that. He's made that very clear. He could not be more clear. We still don't know what the Democrats oppose. They are for every single thing that's in the continuing resolution. They're just not for the continuing resolution. And I just read today that Nancy Pelosi is out taking the House members to dinner at a fancy restaurant, while our military and our firefighters are wondering if they're going to be paid.
What about Senator Schumer? Has the president spoken with him in the past few hours?
Well, the president had Senator Schumer here at the White House for a very small meeting yesterday that involved just the two of them and their chiefs of staff. So he asked Senator Schumer, of course, what is it? What are you looking for? I mean, if the answer is always going to be from the Democrats, we want to talk just about DACA, then we're not talking about everything else that is a continuing resolution. Jeanine, it took Donald Trump to stick the Democrats in this odd box where they're tonight against S-chip funding for the 9 million or so children who rely upon it for health care. The Democrats
well, you know what? I'm going to stop you right there,
that.
Kellyanne. Kellyanne, that's such an important point. You know, I don't know if people understand CHIP. CHIP is a health care program for, is it 9 million kids?
About our most vulnerable children who rely upon it. That's right.
Right, and the Democrats aren't going to vote for this. That's why the headlines that I just ran in my open, you know, everyone is blaming the Democrats because this is unconscionable.
It's unconscionable. It's also, the Democrats have spent more than a year now proudly saying that their motto is resistance. Resist, obstruct, say no. Say no to everything. So in the span of one short month, the Democrats have effectively said no to historic tax cuts, the benefit of which American workers are feeling already. Millions of American workers getting billions of dollars in raises, bonuses, capital investments by these employers. Essentially, if you voted no against the tax cuts last month, you voted no for the 20,000 jobs that Apple has just promised. If you voted no yesterday to keep the government open, you're voting against funding the military and giving these vulnerable children the health care that they rely upon. And that's very difficult for the Democrats because when people look up, they're not going to say, oh, the Republicans are in charge of the government. People are going to know you need 60 votes in the Senate. So by its very definition, it has to be bipartisan. And number two, they're going to say, I probably think that the party that has said resist, obstruct, and no for over a year now are the ones saying no again.
Well, and I want to read, and I'll call for President Trump's tweet today. He says, beautiful weather all over our great country, a perfect day for all women to march. Get out there now to celebrate the historic milestones and unprecedented economic success and wealth creation that has taken place over the last 12 months, the lowest female unemployment in 18 years. And they're out there marching, again, with those pink hats. And I was here a year ago, as were you, obviously, Kellyanne, and women's unemployment is at an unbelievable low, and they're still protesting, most of them. I don't know what they're protesting. Do you?
Well, I see how they're spending their tax cut anyway, but look, they're stimulating the economy that he's created. There's more that won't fit in one tweet, and that was one of my favorite all-time tweets, which says a lot because I have many favorite ones. But since this president took office, 863,000 new jobs were filled by women. Over 500,000 American women have entered the workforce since he took over. And as he said yesterday in the Rose Garden, in addition to unemployment among women being at a 17-year low, unemployment among African Americans, among Hispanics are at all-time lows. So this is a rising economy. When people see their paychecks are fatter, their 401ks are larger, their investments are more robust, you can't argue with the metrics. And those metrics benefit everyone. Even those women today who said that somehow they're protesting. What exactly are you resisting? And may I just say, this president's been here for 1 year. After 8 years of the last president, that has led to the 30 million Americans who still don't have health insurance. That led to the millions of women still in poverty. We're doing what we can, given what we inherited. And I'm so proud of this president. He's been a president for all women, and he's elevated women in his cabinet, in his administration, in his White House, the way he's elevated them in his corporation, his campaign. I'm very proud to work for somebody who's such a great boss for women.
Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much for being with us tonight. All right. And we're 20-plus hours into the government shutdown, but a full year into President Trump's presidency. And standing by live tonight is first son Eric Trump, who will join me in a moment from Mar-a-Lago to talk about his dad, what's going on in D.C., and what the future holds as we embark on year 2 of Trump. Eric is next as Justice rolls on, live from Washington.
Another president, Jeanine, will sit in the Oval Office and do practically nothing all day. I'm doing every minute of the day. I'm doing something. I'm cutting prices. This nation has such unbelievable potential.
Welcome back to Justice Live from D.C. on this very busy night of news. That's a look back at my interview with the president in the White House last year. And now here we are in the anniversary of his first year in office, and he's hard at work trying to get a deal done to end this Democrat shutdown. Joining me now by phone, Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization and the president's son, Eric Trump. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, Judge. How are you?
I'm terrific. Now, I don't know if you heard the sound that we just ran of your dad, but what it basically said was, I'm working every minute of the day and I'm doing something. I'm cutting prices. We have unbelievable potential. Now, is that any surprise to you? Number one, that he's working every minute of the day, and number two, that that he is reaching some of the potential that he promised for us?
No, it's not. I mean, first of all, my father's the hardest working person I've ever met in my life. And second of all, it has the Democrats absolutely terrified. I mean, Judge, we are exactly 1 year into his presidency. And if you look at it, he's added $8 trillion to the nation's economy. You know, the Dow is at 26,000. 401ks are the highest that they've ever been. You know, there used to be 40,000 ISIS fighters. They're down to less than 1,000. And, you know, that's getting depleted rapidly. You know, unemployment's at a 17-year low, consumer confidence at an all-time high. I mean, I could keep going. I mean, jobs, industries coming back to this country. Apple just announced that they're investing $350 billion in America. You know, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but the Democrats are terrified. My father's working like no one has ever worked before to bring back this country and, you know, fulfill his promise to make America great again. And I just could not be more proud of the man.
Well, and what is really amazing is that here we are a year later, and, you know, we've got this Women's March, you know, somewhat like the march last year, and certainly not as large. And yet the women, as I just spoke with Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway, I mean, you know, they are in a position much better than they were last year in terms of employment. And it's almost as though it doesn't matter what your father accomplishes. It's this obstruct, resist. We got to stop this man. And you ask some of them what they're marching about. They don't know.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You look at this whole government shutdown, and the only reason they want to shut down government is to distract and to stop his momentum. I mean, my father has had incredible momentum. He's gotten more done in 1 year than arguably any president in history. And so how do they divert from that message? I mean, how do they save their own party when they don't have any leadership? They don't have any, you know, good candidates out there. They don't have a message of their own. How do they do that? They obstruct, they distract, they try and place blame, and it's the worst of the government. And honestly, I think it's a good thing for us, you know, Judge, because people see through it. I mean, people have seen a year that's incredible, that's been filled with nothing but the best for our country, America First policies. And they're happy with where we are as a nation. You know, families are wealthier, families are doing better, jobs are better, our economy is better, there's lower unemployment. I mean, our nation is thriving once again. It was going down and it was going in an awful direction. Our nation is thriving again, and that's because of his actions, and it really has the Democrats worried.
And do you think that this, you know, the Democrats arguing that they have to make sure that DACA is taken care of over, you know, the damage that's being done to military families, CHIP, sick children? Do you think the American public sees through this? Do you think they see that the Democrats are just obstructing, that they don't want to help Americans, that their priority right now is DACA, when in truth, Obama could have handled this and had it all done with. And all of a sudden, they want to complain about your father.
Well, it's kind of interesting. My father was elected for one reason, and that's because he actually believed in putting America first, which is overwhelming among the citizens of this country. They want to see our country come first again, and it hadn't been put first for a very long time. Second of all, if you looked at the vote, you had 269 Republicans who voted to keep government open. You had 230 Democrats who voted to close government, and then they'll say that Trump is trying to close government. It's kind of interesting, again, because you had 269 Republicans who wanted to keep it open, and 230 Democrats wanted to close it, and they'll say that Trump wanted to close government. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I'm pretty good at math, but, you know, my father wants to put the people of this country first. He has put the people of this country first. Our nation is thriving. We are the most prosperous nation, arguably, that we've ever been. The
Yes.
Dow Jones is up 42%. 42% in 1 year.
Unbelievable.
And,
It's all
and you know
been...
what? He's kept every promise. He's kept every promise that he's made to this country, and quite frankly, he's actually even done better than he promised this country would, and he's in his first year of his presidency.
That's
and
right.
Honestly, I am so excited for what's to come. The man has done an unbelievable job, and I am just so excited for what's to come for this country, for the citizens of this country.
Eric, I think come February, when even more Americans see money in their paychecks, it's really going to hit home. Eric Trump, I can't thank you enough. I know you're busy tonight for joining us on Justice, and kiss your little baby for us.
I absolutely will, Judge. Take care.
All right, you too. And Dan Bongino, Chris Hahn, and actor Stephen Baldwin, all still on deck tonight. But next we go live back to Capitol Hill for an update on the breaking news and talks to end the shutdown. Plus, new details on the shocking FISA memo that everyone's speaking about. Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz has seen the memo, and he joins me live. Don't miss this one. Back in a moment.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Marianne Rafferty. Vice President Mike Pence making the second stop on his Mideast tour. The Vice President arriving tonight in Jordan, leaving the government shutdown behind in Washington. He'll be meeting with King Abdullah, and he'll also be visiting U.S. troops stationed in Jordan. The Vice President met with Egyptian leader el-Sisi earlier in the day. He stressed the U.S. relationship with Egypt has never been stronger. Meantime, in Switzerland, the International Olympic Committee says 22 athletes from North Korea will be allowed to compete in the Winter Games in South Korea. They'll compete in 5 disciplines, including a unified women's ice hockey team. The North and South teams will march together in the opening ceremony. The president of the IOC thanked both countries. The games start February 9th. I'm Marianne Rafferty. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
Breaking tonight, talks continue on Capitol Hill as the government shutdown nears the end of day one. Meantime, Republican members of Congress are calling for a release of a controversial memo they say shows stunning abuses by the Obama administration and the DOJ. Joining me now is Congressman Matt Gaetz, member of the House Judiciary Committee. All right, Congressman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Good to be with you.
Oh, good. Now, we've been hearing for months about Fusion GPS, the DNC, Hillary Clinton, we find out, actually paid for, this document that was created. And then we started hearing that this document, which was false and a fraud, was the basis of a FISA warrant. There is talk or reports that there is now a report that will show us and shock us about the abuses. Can you tell us about that report?
There are 4 pages of a memorandum prepared by the Intelligence Committee that will shock the conscience of this country when it comes to the horrific abuses that occurred during the last administration and that I believe continue to pose a threat to Donald Trump's presidency. It is so important, Judge Jeanine, that we are fighting to get this memo released to all of the American people. I don't think the right answer is just to allow members of Congress to be horrified and outraged. All Americans need to see what was happening to undermine this president duly elected.
How do we release this information? When do I get to see it?
Well, at any moment in time, the intelligence chairman, who has done an excellent job, Devin Nunes, can schedule a vote in the Intelligence Committee. If the Intelligence Committee votes to declassify this information, and if President Trump doesn't overrule that, it will immediately become available to the American people, and that is necessary.
Who wrote it?
This is a composite memo drafted by the staff of the Intelligence Committee, and it highlights various conclusions that will truly shock the consciousness.
But what do you mean it highlights whose conclusions?
Well, names are named. The names that we've talked about in the news associated with the corruption that is posed to President.
McCabe, and Strzok, and who else?
Well, I can't go into the specifics specific names until we share that information, but I can say this. Names are named, and you also get to see the interaction between the various people that we've been discussing and the organizations and entities that had a stake in the outcome in the 2016 election. And so going from a point in time where we have just a series of data points and characters to actually assembling that into a fact pattern, it tells a lot to the American people about what was really going on in our government.
When is Devin Nunes going to schedule this for a vote?
Well, he said he wanted to hear from more members of Congress. 64 of us have already sent him a letter.
On the phone. You can do that in an hour.
I spoke to him today on the floor. The good news is that Chairman Nunes, Bob Goodlatte, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and Trey Gowdy are working together on the timing of this. But I think this is so important, so shocking, it should be public immediately, and we're pressing the timetable.
Tell me what we're going to be shocked about.
I think we'll be shocked not only at the way information was collected, but the way that that information was authenticated. And I can't go into any details, but only to say that you're aware as a judge of the way evidence has to be authenticated and presented to a court to get a warrant. And
it has to be probable cause to sign a warrant.
Of course. And prosecutors and investigators cannot perpetrate frauds on the court by presenting false information or information they know to be false.
All right, so let's assume that we're talking about Bruce Orr, Lisa Orr, McCabe, Strzok, possibly Rosenstein, Jim Comey. I don't want to hear, if any of what you're suggesting is true, that these guys get to dictate when they're going to retire. My viewers want them taken out in cuffs. If they violated the law, they need to be taken out in cuffs. Is that going to happen?
Well, heads are going to roll. I believe.
What does that mean?
Well, I believe crimes were committed. I read this
now
memo.
you got to send it to Jeff Sessions, assuming that he's got a Justice Department that's going to be fair.
Well, we need Jeff Sessions to be the Attorney General, not an employee at the Justice Department. That's been one of the major problems, is that he hasn't exercised sufficient control of that agency. And I think he did a great job as a senator, but as Attorney General.
I don't care. Right now he's AG. It doesn't matter about when he was a senator. Good for him. Congressman Gates, I can't wait to read it.
Hopefully soon.
2 weeks?
I'm hoping sooner.
Good. All right. A quick programming note, by the way. If you follow me on social media, you know that we were planning on bringing you a street justice tonight from Hillary Clinton's hometown of Chappaqua, New York, where I was in the woods looking for her. Way too much breaking news out of Washington tonight, but we're going to bring you that street justice next week, hopefully if the shutdown business is cleared up, and I think it will be. Anyway, a little later than usual tonight due to the breaking news, but the panel is ready for battle. Dan Bongino and Chris Hahn. Oh, boy. Join me live next to debate the chaos in Washington and who's responsible. The throwdown over the shutdown is next. Welcome back to Justice, live from the nation's capital. The president's first year hijacked many times by headlines ranging from Russia collusion to Mueller's probe and now this Democrat-orchestrated government shutdown. Joining me now with a reaction, former Secret Service agent and best-selling author Dan Bongino, along with former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, radio talk show host Chris Hahn. All right, Chris, I'm going to start with you. They're calling it the Schumer shutdown, your old boss, and the Dems in the Senate could end it now if they wanted to, correct?
Who is calling it the Schumer shutdown? It's the Trump shutdown. President Trump himself, Judge, said that nobody's going to blame the leaders in the Senate and the House. They're going to blame the president when Obama had a shutdown. Now, the president, what I would advise the president is he get all the parties into the White House tonight, put on a pot of coffee, lock the doors, and stay there until they have a deal. He's supposed to be this great deal maker. Let's see him make that deal.
Dan?
Oh, gosh, Judge, where do you start with Chris? You know I love this guy. Chris is a nice guy.
I love
personally,
you too, Dan. You know
he
that.
He is so clueless on politics. It is beyond belief. Who's calling it the Schumer shutdown? Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer's calling it the Schumer shutdown. Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question.
No.
Wait, I'm being very serious here. Chris, you worked for Schumer, right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
Okay, so we got that. You did work. So you understand that there's this filibuster process, correct?
I absolutely understand there's a filibuster process.
Okay, wait,
I also
time out.
understand
So, Chris,
that the president was
hold on.
given his
How many
wall.
votes?
Chris, let him talk.
How many votes do you need to overcome a Democrat filibuster? Come on, Chris. I know you know this.
60.
What is your war on grammar?
Okay,
Democratic.
thank
60.
you.
What are you
Thank
doing
you.
here?
It's the
You're trying to
Schumer
teach civics
shutdown.
here?
Yeah,
Again,
you went on
nobody's
the
going to
air
remember
and said, who's calling
Schumer.
it the
They're going to
Schumer
remember
shutdown?
Trump.
Wait a minute.
Nobody.
Wait a minute. Where's that poster where Schumer himself said the government shutdowns are idiotic? Where is that one? Right there. Can you see it? A government shutdown is the politics of idiocy. I can't see it. Of confrontation, of paralysis. That's your old
Judge.
boss, Schumer.
Judge.
What did he do?
Judge,
Is he
we can go back in
schizophrenic?
time. We can
What,
go
he
back in
changed his
time
mind?
with both Schumer. We can go back in time with both Schumer and Trump and their quotes about who would be responsible here, and it wouldn't make either one of them look good. That's why
You know
they
what?
got the
Let me
president
tell you,
needs
Chris,
to lead. The buck stops with him.
The president only has so many Republicans. The Democrats, there is nothing in this bill that they oppose. We're talking about children being at risk, the military being at risk because they're worried about DACA.
Right.
What's that about?
The president made it. Look, the president has to take yes for an answer. There was a deal on DACA. There was a deal on the wall. The president didn't want that deal for some reason. I don't know if Tom Cotton got to him, Steve Miller. I don't know who it was, but the president needs to bring the leaders in the room and walk out with a deal and walk to the podium and announce that deal so that Tom Cotton and everybody else can't change it.
You said it before. Go ahead, Dan.
Chris, you're just not telling the truth. I don't know why you continue to do this on the show. Chris, let me ask you again. Is there a DACA deal out there right now for anybody to sign? Okay, let me answer that question for you. The answer is no. Okay, there's no DACA deal to sign. No. Just admit you're not telling the truth. There is no DACA deal.
Hold on a
Chris
second,
doesn't
Dan.
even know when.
Hold on a second.
Time out. Because here's my second point on this. Hold on. The DACA deadline isn't even until March 5th. I'm not sure if you were aware of that, but it's March 5th. Now, Chris, I have my iPhone here. It's not March 5th, okay? You may have a tough time telling time, but it's not March 5th yet.
Look, Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin brought a DACA deal to this president last week, and the president rejected it. Okay, so we don't want to govern crisis to crisis here. We are also tired of CRs. This would be the fourth CR. It's the fourth CR.
Chris,
let's get a full budget.
Chris, stop for a second. Crisis to crisis. Why didn't Obama do this? Huh? Why is now all of a sudden it's Donald Trump's fault?
The majority held by the Republicans in the Senate and the House would not take it up. Please.
Really?
We all know
Judge,
that.
Wait.
No. Go ahead,
Judge,
Dan.
another thing. Chris is not telling the truth again because the Senate deal, DACA deal he's talking about had not been passed by the House and was not ready to go by the time the budget passed.
Right.
He's not telling you the truth. He's making it up. And one more thing. Barack Obama from September 2009 till January 2010 had a supermajority and could have done a DACA deal. And you know what he did? Zero. So cut the crap with this DACA deal nonsense.
There was a bipartisan deal on immigration that passed the Senate that was not taken up in the House.
Making that up.
So let's be clear about that. The House of Representatives would not allow the vote. I'm not making anything up, Dan. Read it.
There's no signed DACA deal from the House and the Senate that passed for Trump to sign. You're just making it up.
There was a bipartisan deal on immigration that included DACA that passed the Senate.
All right.
It was a
Chris,
bipartisan deal.
Let me ask you a question. Is there anything, Chris, is there anything in the funding bill to keep our government going on behalf of children, the military, federal employees? Is there anything in that the Democrats oppose? No.
I think what the Democrats oppose is crisis to crisis. Another CR where we can't plan for our military for a year.
Crisis to crisis is not in the bill, Chris.
It is another crisis-producing bill. This CR will expire in 4 weeks. We need a full year's funding for our military so that our military planners can. This is what the Secretary of Defense said on Thursday. Don't take my word for it. Take theirs.
Dan.
Yeah, Judge, Chris is telling you that while the Barack Obama administration for 8 years funded the military on CRs. I mean, you understand, again, he's just making this up. Nothing he says has a basis in fact.
I didn't make anything
He's making it up. The Obama administration funded the military on CRs. Let me just say, I agree with Chris. We should not be funding our warfighters on CRs. Obama did it for 8 years, and now Schumer all of a sudden had an epiphany and doesn't want to fund the military on CRs. Give me a break.
Yeah, and Obama had a Republican House and Senate, and the president has both.
Really?
And the Senate is his.
First
yes.
term,
The
no.
president
He didn't
of the
have a
United States-
supermajority for his first 2 years?
He did not.
President Trump has majorities in both the House and Senate. If he wants to do a real budget where the 12 appropriation
All
bills
right,
get passed
enough
by
of
their
this,
committees
guys.
through
Dan
regular order, he can
Bongino,
get
Chris
it done.
Hahn, you fulfilled our
Thanks, guys.
anticipation. Goodbye. Jim Comey, Mika Brzezinski, and a certain doctor from another television network. They all made my list of outrageous statements this week. Actor Stephen Baldwin is here in Washington to talk about all of it with me next.